Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to True Crime Unraveled. Uh, Here's the thing: what's going on in the Idaho 4 case? You have, of course, Brett Payne stating that the two traffic stops were not on his radar until Brian Koberger's name on December 19th. So, exactly what does that mean for this case? Well, for one, it's clearly a botched investigation from the start. There's a lot of mainstream media sensationalism going on in this case, i.e., Nancy Grace and Ashley Banfield. But when Ann Taylor asked Brett Payne in that close hearing, when Brian Koberger's name came up, and before December 19th, Brian Koberger was a relative unknown in this case. They didn't hear about Brian Koberger's name until December 19th. And which is a total gas to me. And they also had two unknown male DNAs, well before Brian's name ever came up. They refused to test him because they didn't want to destroy the touch DNA off the knife sheath. That's not a full investigation. That's just stating to me, well, we have this guy, but we have two other suspects. We don't want to pursue the two other suspects because we have our scapegoat, basically. And I do believe, guys, Brett Payne as well in this case is a scapegoat because you have uh, him being named lead investigator in the first 24 hours of this case. And from the time he got that lead investigator role, he has bumbled and fumbled through this case, and a large majority of his work wasn't technically his work. There was three people working on that probable crap affidavit: Blaker, Mowry, and Payne. Why do you need three people working on the same thing? And then once it's finished, they just decide to go with one person's probable cause affidavit and take the other two and just throw it in the mix. And I will never understand that. And it's supposed to be for probable cause. Well, if you look in that PCA, which is according to the state now irrelevant, you have these statements of DM, and personally, DM is an incredible witness. Because she states to the investigators about 3 or 4 times after the murders that she was drunk, didn't know what was going on, and she really has no clue. And then we hear the statement that the person she saw had a handheld vacuum, which I don't believe it was a handheld vacuum. And why are we listening to the ramblings of a drunk woman who didn't know it was real or a dream going on that night? But the key here is Bethany. But I doubt we'll ever hear Bethany testify because in the beginning we heard Bethany has exculpatory evidence for Brian Koberger, but her attorneys kept trying to quash that subpoena because Bethany wants no part of this case. She doesn't want to go back to Idaho. She's living in Reno, Nevada now, and apparently, the last thing I heard, Bethany and Dylan are living their best life. Supposedly, Dylan just had a baby by uh, a law enforcement officer. Gee, I wonder if it's one of the MPD officers. I don't know, but and with the whole, I'm drunk and this and that, they kept that out of the probable cause to Megan Marshall. They didn't want to put that in there. Maybe they thought that Megan Marshall would strike down the PCA because it mentions Dylan being drunk. But I'd like to know, uh, just what the judge has stated. And yeah, this judge he's pro prosecution, pro law enforcement. Um, he don't want this case, and I mean he has exclaimed that numerous times, especially in the beginning. I'd say it's nice to meet you, but I wouldn't want to tell a half truth. He's just trying to fast track this trial just to get it out of his courtroom because he don't want this case in his courtroom. The last thing I heard that the cases he normally listens to is medical malpractice. But hey, the Idaho Supreme Court picked this judge. It might have been a mistake because um, he seems very against the defense. I mean, he like literally chopped their legs out from under them by denying all these motions to suppress. And I'm going through that. I printed out that 175-page document, and I'm going through it with a fine-tooth comb. And as well, I printed out the motion to Lamine, and there's really something very interesting in it. Let me grab it for you. And it's for the alibi. I've been printing off a lot of documents lately. It's now been approximately 20 months since the state has made its request for a discovery of disclosure of alibi demand. Well, if you remember, Brian did give a partial alibi, and it was that he was at Walleye Park at the time of the unalivings. And this is really very interesting. Even were the defendant to attempt to comply at this late point, or at this point, at this late point in time, the state is irrevocably prejudiced. Means they don't want to hear an alibi. As well as the state is trying to get the alternative suspect theory thrown out in this case because they feel they have their suspect. They don't want to hear about any other suspects, and that's just BS. And they're trying to basically hamstring and completely cut the knees out from under the defense, especially with this statement. If the defendant proffers evidence which merely tends to mislead the jury that another person committed the crime, or the evidence is not relevant because it does not tend to make the defendant's involvement more probable or less probable. Basically, they're saying that we don't want to hear anything unless it pertains to Brian being at the scene or Brian committing these murders. That's what they're saying with this. They don't want to hear anything about alternative suspects or anything like that, even though they have two unknown male DNAs that they refuse to test because they didn't want to take away from the precious knife sheath. Yeah, they refused to upload these unknown male B and unknown male D because, according to Payne, it would destroy the touch DNA off the knife sheath. So we're not going to test them. But Payne did state that they would be able to more likely go back and look at them at a later date. And what is that later date? When when this trial blows up in their face and Brian gets off either by mistrial, not guilty, or hung jury. Are they going to go back and look at it then? In my honest opinion, guys, no, they're not, because they think they have the right guy. They're not going to go back and test this DNA, in the event of one of those three things happening, they will more than likely turn around, rearrest him, recharge him, and retry him. Then it is within the trial court's discretion to find the evidence inadmissible. More inferences that another person could have committed the crime will most likely not be relevant. And if it is relevant, we will still be subject to the limitation provisions. So basically, in my opinion, what they're doing here with that statement is they're saying, yeah, we don't want to hear anything. We don't want to hear anything. They're trying to handcuff the defense to where they can't properly defend their client. And, why are they doing that? You are probably thinking to yourself, well, this could be Bill Thompson's last big trial like this. Because he's getting older. His friend, Judge John Judge, retired after the change of venue was granted. And with this big, high-profile case, this could be what Bill Thompson is looking for, is to ride off into the sunset, knowing that he just condemned somebody to death, even though quite possibly they're not the person. But in Bill Thompson's mind, he believes that they are the person. He's looking for this last hurrah, basically. This last slam dunk conviction and sentencing, and basically in the end victory. And then he's going to right off into the sunset, retire. And I'm not, Ashley Jennings, she is a piss poor prosecutor. She is. That last hearing on the 23rd, she was stumbling around. She wanted to add that there's a third cell tower in Moscow, and Judge Hippler basically told her she couldn't do it, or else he was going to go ahead with the Franks hearing, but he ended up not. Because he denied the motion for Franks. This, I swear, guys, this town is a very corrupt town. And I'm going to say it again, guys. I am. These killings were a stain and a blemish on the University of Idaho. Why do you think they were so quick to tear the house down? Why do you think that they distanced themselves from the house so quickly in the early stages of this investigation? Everything was their off-campus home, even though it predominantly set on Greek Row. And I'm going to say it again: it predominantly set on Greek Row. It was a iconic home, according to Libby Gonzalez, that Maddie and Kaylee were so excited to live in. And then I don't think none of us, not the Gonzaleses or the Mogans or the Chapins or the Kernodals or the Laramies, ever thought this house was going to be the final place where their children lived. I mean, and I don't think, honestly, guys, I don't think that the investigators have been properly keeping these victims' families in the loop on what was going on. Because if they did, then Stephen Gonzalez wouldn't have stood out in front of MPD with that Fox News anchor, I think it was Lawrence Jones was his name, saying, I sent my daughter to school and I brought her home in a box. Don't make me be the alpha. And I was sitting back last night and thinking about that. The only reason why he was saying don't make me be the alpha was the fact that he wasn't being kept in the loop, as far as the investigators. Now, there was something interesting in the case summary about vulgar comments about the death penalty and the firing squad, which we have heard that the Gonzalez's have stated that, and they would show up in death penalty T-shirts, but we don't know if that was the state that filed it or the defense that filed it. The trial is starting, guys, in 4 months, maybe a little less than 4 months. Jury selection starts in July, and I was all honesty, I was kind of hoping this thing wouldn't go to trial because of the suppression motions. Now that we know that Judge Hippler denied them all, and he wants this thing to go to trial because he wants this case out of his courtroom, it's going to go to trial because he wants Brian in a jury of his peers. He wants to see Brian in front of a jury of his peers. Whatever happens, which I hope is either not guilty or mistrial or hung jury, but I honestly believe that this judge, if it's a hung jury, will send them back and make them redeliberate until they can come up with a verdict. Nothing's going to take the place of the actual crime scene. And yes, the crime scene's gone. This cheaply made Barbie house looking model is an embarrassment. How are they going to accurately walk the jury through what all happened in that house without the crime scene being there? Because at least if the crime scene was there, they'd be able to walk around like the outside and everything else to get the feeling of what was going on in the house that night. You can't do that in a freaking 3D rendered model that looks like a dollhouse. What are you going to use? Little Barbie dolls and Ken dolls to display the victims that night, how they were found? That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard of. But I said that to say this: we all got to keep an open mind when it comes to this case. And yes, we see the rife of corruption in this case. I'm finding that the more and more I read through this transcript. But we all got to keep an open mind, keep praying for Brian, and keep praying for the victims of this crime, that they find true justice, not just justice that's made up. Because the only reason why Dylan is going to testify, I don't think she's going to testify to point out the killer, because she couldn't identify the killer through a photo lineup. She's just going to be there to corroborate the timeline, and I honestly think the timeline is complete junk. The murders took place well before 4 a.m. This timeline is complete junk. It's basically police generated timeline, just so they can fit the narrative in that Brian did this when he was more likely nowhere near the house. Because if he was near the house, why are they trying to suppress their own data? They're trying to suppress the AT&T cell tower data. Are they? Is there something in there they don't like? So is that why they're going to suppress it? Maybe it shows Brian nowhere near the house. and they don't want the jury to see that. And what's the best way to keep Cy from testifying? Just that. Suppress the solid tower data. I hope you guys have a good Sunday. I'm going to be releasing another video later. This is Robert with True Crime Unraveled. I'm out, guys. Peace.
Like you, be strong to hold the powers of the sun.